Welcome, growth seekers and freedom fighters, to the Grow to Be Free podcast. I'm your host, Kiani Williams, and it is my goal to help you reach your fullest potential through listening to the stories of real women who have broken through a new level of life. And so listen in and take notes, because you're going to learn so many practical and tangible tips to help you grow to your fullest potential in business and in life. So let's get to it. Welcome back to Grow to Be Free. This episode is brought to you by Break the Odds podcast in partnership with the Student Navigator. A couple of weeks back, I did an interview with the host of the Break the Odds podcast, Miss Elease Dillard. You might remember her from the season 1 finale, where she talked about how she was able to fund college debt free. And she invited me on to her podcast in a virtual pop-up event because I have actually been able to fund my college experience completely debt free as well. For me, I won a lot of scholarships, and I also had very supportive help from my parents. So she invited me on to talk about my scholarship winning tips and a little bit about my mindset around scholarships and how to fund college debt free, as well as a little bit about personal growth and development. And if you know anything about this podcast or have been listening for some time, you'll know that's what we talk about a lot. So I am so excited to bring to you this episode where I'm being interviewed, because I'm not typically being interviewed. So you'll learn a little bit about me and a little bit about my tips and just everything that I have to share with you guys. Be sure to check out the links in the show notes for Break the Odds and the Student Navigator. And if you're a college student or looking to get into college anytime soon, check out all of the resources that they have. They're really going to help you out. So without further ado, let's get to the episode.
Yeah, thank you. Well, everybody, I'm Kiani and I am 25 years old. I'm from San Diego, California, and Elease went over all of the really great things that I've been able to accomplish in my life. But I definitely want you guys to understand like where I've come from as well, because it's not always a beautiful sunshine of rainbows in somebody's story, and I want to acknowledge that. And to be honest, like in my high school life, fitting in was hard, and I know maybe some of you are in high school or going through some things in college that you might feel like is holding you back. So I just want to let you know that even though you see somebody who's successful, you can also be successful no matter what your backstory is. And so yeah, for me, my story has been my parents have been divorced my entire life, and so money was always a battle between both sides. And I know one of my parents' biggest dreams was to send her kids to college. Coming up with the money to go to college was kind of challenging. I think my mom was my initial encouragement to start applying for scholarships, which is super huge. And as a teenager, I didn't quite understand the importance of applying for scholarships, but my mindset definitely changed the moment that I realized that I wanted to live on campus because my parents made it clear if I wanted to live on campus that I would need to chip in. And I think being a college student and living at home was a different experience. I feel like some of you guys might understand that for sure. That was really like my big motivation, and living at home was a challenge for me. So all of a sudden I had a really big dream and a big need to apply for scholarships, and it wasn't easy putting in the work to apply for applications after school, because for me, I was definitely an overachiever. I crammed my schedule with extracurriculars and AP and honors courses. In fact, my junior year, I was on 2 dance teams, co-captain of the color guard team, and was taking 2 AP classes and an honors class all in 1 year. So deep down inside, my main goal was to get into a good school, and that way I didn't have to stay in the same town my whole life. And I'm sure some of the audience could probably relate to that. Scholarships was a hard thing to apply for after school, but if you want something bad enough, you definitely can make it happen.
Yes, I love that. And I just love like the perseverance and determination that you have. Like regardless, you made it work. And I just love that. And so I'm excited to ask you more and dive into that. But in regards to, you were talking about in your bio, you're talking about grow to be free and just all of that. Talk about a little bit behind like the mindset. What drove you to, I know we're going to dive into that a little bit more later, but just in conversation, like what kind of motivated you? Like you said, you had that light bulb moment where you said you wanted to live on campus and that kind of drove you. So what kind of helped you get from like that place of wanting to fund college debt free to like actually taking that action to actually do something about it?
Yeah, to be honest, in high school, I wasn't thinking, oh, I want to graduate from college debt free. Like that wasn't something that really registered for me. I just know, I could see the need. Like I could see that my mom, she didn't have a whole lot of money lying around. And then also I knew deep down inside, I really wanted to live on campus and I really wanted to have that experience. And if that's something that I really wanted, I should really go for it. It's just, if it's something that's that important to you, I definitely would recommend starting to take action. I feel like if it's that important to you, you can find a way to do it no matter what. For most people, it's not so much finding the opportunities, it's just getting started. I don't want to spoil too many of my tips for later on in the conversation, but I also could see too, another part of it is that I applied for scholarships, absolutely, but I do want to note I also had help from my parents too. So it wasn't just me doing it all by myself, but I definitely could see that my mom was putting in a lot of work. So if it was my college, I should put in some work too.
Yeah, no. And I think it's amazing how you acknowledge that. For me, I also graduated college debt free. And so that's why I'm just loving this conversation to be able to, as someone who teaches students how to fund college debt free, being able to have this conversation with another debt free graduate. I just love it. But I know you admitted, you talked about how your parents played a role in that. But I think that still is a big part of your journey, and the fact that there was some that you were responsible for too. So you were, at the end of the day, debt free is debt free however you get there. And for some people, it might not be their parents, but they might have had a sports scholarship that paid part of the way and they still had to supplement the rest, or what have you. Or maybe they decided to work that paid for part of it, but then they had to supplement another way. So even though you had your parents, but at the end of the day, you still, at the end of the day, took action to fill in the gap of what was left to be debt free. So that still hat goes off to you still with doing that, because at the end of the day, that played a factor in you being debt free. So I think that's big. I guess you talked about your experience of choosing to stay at home at some point, and I would love for you to talk and expand on that for some of our listeners, because I hear so many students, as I work with students, they want to live on campus and they feel like that's the only way they can have the true college experience. But living on campus, room and board, is not cheap, as you attested to. So talk about that. Like, what was your experience like? What was your college experience like, going to college, living from home, and how, and just share the audience like what that was like, and were you able to still have that full college experience? And what was that like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm definitely so grateful for my first year living on campus, because it definitely did give me that college experience that everybody talks about. But yeah, it is a little bit different when you move back home, especially from living on campus for 1 year and then going back to it. I feel like that makes it a little bit more difficult, I'll admit. I will say that having your family there to support you is also super key. So I know sometimes we might not feel like our family really supports us, but having a home cooked meal every now and then is really nice. For the people who are living at home and are a little bit resentful of that, I would just recommend to look at the bright side and look at the positive things. You're just in a certain season right now, and it's not going to be like that forever. And so look at the positive things about living at home. I will also recommend too, if you really want to get out of there and be on your own, do everything you can to do that. There's definitely opportunities to do that. And like Elease alluded to, you can start having a job. Like I worked throughout college as well, like sometimes multiple jobs at once, and that's okay. And if you have a goal, definitely just put it in front of you so that way you can work towards it every single day, really. Yeah, that's my advice there.
Yeah, and you can still have the college experience of living at home, because there's some people that can just go to and from their dorm room and not do anything on campus. So it's really how you make it. So it doesn't mean that you have less of a college experience. And for anybody who might be debating like, oh, should I stay at home? Should I live on campus? There is something called being an RA, or a resident advisor, or resident assistant. And that, for most schools, pays for room and board and your meal plan. If not all of it, most of it. So if somebody's wanting to consider, that's just something that came to mind that I wanted to share, that that's a way where you can get your room and board paid for, and and live on campus and be debt free. That was something that just popped in my head. I wanted to share.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, you actually sparked some more things to me too, because when I moved back home, I was very aware of the fact that a lot of people just went to school and came back, went to school, came back. I was very aware of that. So I made it a point to start getting involved on campus. So I joined a sorority, which is not something that I intended on doing, but I found the right one for me at the time. And it doesn't have to be a fraternity or sorority. Getting involved with a club on campus or one of those, what do they call it? It's not an actual sports team on campus, but it's like a fun one. Yes, intramurals. Yes, they have a lot of those that are for fun. And even, okay, let's just say you hate clubs, or I don't know, you just don't want to do all that. And let's just say that your campus is allowing people physically there. You can just hang out at the library, do your work there, and you can get away from just being at home. I feel like the library is the library and like the food court are like the two, like this is what college is. This is the college experience, really, because you just have people who are just studying or not studying, just taking up space and doing whatever. That's 100% the college experience. And then in the food court, of course, is so much going on, and you can like hang out with your friends if you don't have a club, but you have like other friends from other places, from class and all. It's really, like as Elise said, like what you make of it, and you can choose to drive back home after class, or you can choose to stay on campus for a little bit and hang out. So it's totally up to you.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And so I did want to ask you, because your brand is Grow to Be Free and it's all about personal growth and development. So would you say that when did that journey start for you? Did that start as you were a student? And if so, what inspired you to focus on personal growth and development? And how did that play into your education or just your life as a student?
Yeah, great question. I would say, so it's interesting. I actually, I went back to my old Twitter account recently and was scrolling through a bunch of tweets that I tweeted back in college, and most of them were complete trash. Don't try to look for them. But one of them was me tweeting, and I took a poll. I took a poll of whoever was following me at the time. Should I start an inspirational Twitter account? With that, I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I think in my head I was thinking like, oh, I just want to tweet out some positive stuff or encouraging motivational things. And people said, yeah, do it. But I never did it. And so when I went back through my Twitter account, I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, like I was thinking of this in, I don't know, junior year or sophomore year of college. And I didn't do anything with it until like recently, which is very interesting. And I definitely know that personal growth has been something that's been huge in my life, just because naturally I have felt like I have rebirthed myself in a way. I actually have a tattoo of a lotus flower here, and I got it because a lotus, it dies at night and then reblooms every single day. And so it does a lot of it's like a symbol of rebirth or regrowth, because it does that all the time, and it does it so quickly, like every single day, that that resonates with me, because I felt like that's just how I've been as a person. I've always matured very quickly, but I've always been through like seasons where it's like points in time I can clearly remember where I realized that I have now redeveloped into a new person and evolved into a new version of myself. And so that's just a reoccurring theme that I've seen in my life. And so I stumbled into personal growth and development through already experiencing that, which is interesting. When I actually started to discover podcasts and books and the idea of coaching and all of these other things, was already like years into my personal growth journey, which is really interesting to think about. But yeah, it just fit into my lifestyle over the years.
Yeah, I love that. And the reason why I asked is because anything that we choose to do in life, whether it's funding college debt free or starting a business or whatever you want to do in life, like personal growth and development, like your mindset and your attitude and how you approach it is key. And so that's why I wanted to ask you that question on like what got you into that. And you touched on this a little bit in your answer where you talked about some of the ways that some of the tools that helped you personally grow. So for someone who might be in the audience, especially a student, and they might be saying, okay, I want to better myself, but I don't really know how. Like, how do I do that? How do I personally grow? I have that desire within me to be a better person, but I don't know where to, like, how to go about that. So what advice or tips would you say for someone in general, or specifically a student who might be in the audience, because this is for students today, on how they can get started with taking action to personally grow and tools that can help them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the exact answer will have to depend on which area you want to grow in, because I've learned over the years that personal growth and development also encapsulates like professional development, which events like these are definitely professional development. So if that's where you're wanting to grow, you are in the right place and you are connected with the right person to do all of that. Let's say if you want to personally grow in your relationships, you just want to become better with your friends or better with your boyfriend or family or something like that, I would just start in a place where you feel like is going to be easy for you. Starting small in that way. Say if you're like, oh, like I like podcasts, but maybe I've never listened to a personal development relationship podcast. Find some of those and start listening to those. And those will lead you down different paths of other things that you can do to help yourself, because those will likely give you some tips of how to grow those relationships or how to be a better friend or things like that. So if that's something that you really want to grow in, you start somewhere, whether it be a podcast, if that's easy for you to do. For some people really like books. You could start with books if podcasts aren't something that you like. Or let's just say you're a YouTube person. There are plenty of YouTube videos out there that can help you develop yourself into who you really want to become. And all of that is great, but I think you first need to understand who you want to become first in order to really guide that direction. Because there's so many things out there, so many different there's different versions of what I'm saying everywhere. So I've definitely nothing that I say is like original to me. I've taken it, borrowed it from sources that I've collected over the past. So you have to really look deep inside and figure out, okay, who am I today? Is that who I want to be for the rest of my life? Yes or no? And it's okay if the answer is no. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just where you are in life. And I always believe that we should always be growing and developing into a different person. And that's not ever discounting who you are today. That just means that you're on a path and you need to just know what path you're on and which direction you want to be going. When you figure out who you want to be, I would just take a look at what kind of qualities you like in people. Do you like that somebody is patient? Do you like that somebody is funny? What are the qualities that you like in other people? And look at yourself. Are you those qualities? Do you embody those qualities? And if not, remember, it's totally okay. Give yourself grace. And I would evaluate those qualities as well and figure out, okay, is that something that I want to be and who I want people to remember me as? I think that's even a better question. Who do you want people to remember you as? I know this is such a morbid thing to think about and talk about, but it's something that's actually always on my brain. What are people going to say at my funeral? That's a big one. And it is something that's always in the back of my head. And I don't know why. Ever since I was really young, like 5 years old, I was thinking about my funeral. I don't know why. I guess that's just how God made me. But it's a great question to think about every now and then. What if you were gone tomorrow? What would people say about you? And would you be happy with what they said about you? And I think that's just a really good like check-in point of where do you actually want to be in life? And are you on your way there? Are you way off? Like, where are you? You got to figure out where you are and where you want to go. I think that's always the most important step. And then all of those resources will fall into place from there.
Whew, that was so good, Kiani. Everything. Like, I hope those of you who were like here are taking notes on what she just said, because what you said was so good. When you talked about identifying like who you want to be, like having that clear vision of who do you want to be, because you can seek out, like you said, all these different personal development tools or there's so many things out there, but you have to identify what areas do you want to personally grow in. Like you said, relationships, you said career, whatever it is. Like first, you said identify where you want to be or what areas you want to personally grow in. And then you talked about, you just said so many good things, the different resources. You said books, you said motivational videos, you mentioned podcasts. So those are some resources. And then you also talked about asking yourself and having that mindset. You talked about the question of what would you be remembered as? And I don't think that's like a strange question to think about, because that means like you're being legacy minded. Like you're thinking about what's your legacy going to be. Legacy is beyond just like monetary money or items, material things that you might pass down, but really a legacy is also like the impact that you're making in people's lives, in the community, whatever you're doing, your industry, whatever it is. Think about what do you want to be remembered as, and then work towards that. And then lastly, what you said was so key was like, give yourself grace. If you're looking at yourself and saying, okay, I don't match where I want to be, like, you said give yourself grace, and recognizing that, okay, this is where you start. And there's this phrase I heard somebody say, they said, today is the first day of the rest of your life. And so I think if we look at ourselves and identify where we want to go, today's the first day of the rest of your life. So if you don't like, if what you about yourself or things you want to change, that's okay. Today's the first day of the rest of your life. Just keep moving forward. And I heard somebody say, they said they want to be like 1% better every day. It's like their goal. And so I thought that was really cool. And I recently started to like adapt that. It's not an overnight transformation. And like you said, Kiani, like yours was a multi-year process. Like you were focusing on personal growth before you even started diving into the tangible tools, but it was like a journey for you. The change is not going to happen overnight, but just focus on being 1% better, or like your tattoo says, the lotus, is that correct? Lotus flower? Mm-hmm. Like it rebirths on a regular basis, on a daily basis. So yeah, everything you shared was so good. So I hope you guys are taking notes on what she's saying. So I guess my final question is, because I know we're about to dive into sharing some practical tips for our audience, but I do want to ask, piggyback on closing off the conversation when it talks about personal growth, is because we do have students here. How was that process for you when it came to personal growth and when it came to like friendships and relationships? Because I know sometimes people might lose friends. I know for me, when I really got into personal growth, some of my friends I noticed they kind of distanced away. And it wasn't anything I was doing. I was just focusing on myself. But I guess they could see that change. I don't know. So if somebody's focusing on personal growth and they might notice that their relationship dynamics might shift a little bit, whether it's friendships or, relationships or what have you, did that happen with you? And how did you handle that? And what advice do you give for somebody who might be experiencing that?
Yeah, it's honestly happened to me more times than anybody could ever imagine. And I guess for somebody hearing that might be a little bit disappointing or a little bit sad. And it is at first. And I would recommend, if you feel like that's happening to you, or if you experience this in the future, I would allow yourself to grieve over those relationships. Allow yourself to be sad over those relationships, because relationships are important to us as human beings. And when we lose a relationship or one kind of changes or drifts away, that makes us sad. And we should acknowledge that makes us sad. But does that mean that you need to continue those relationships or try to rekindle it? Absolutely not. And I would not really, it just depends on who it is. But I think you need to understand that you are your own person and your relationships don't define who you are, and your friends don't determine your worth. I know for me, I've had to overcome this idea of however many friends I have determines like how, I don't know, like my self-worth or like my self-image or how much I love myself. That kind of thinking we don't consciously think about. As people, we have to understand that we are our best person when we are our whole selves. And we need to be good with ourselves first before we can have truly successful relationships. So in my own life, I've recognized that I didn't really love myself the way that I should be loving other people, and that actually affected my friendships. And so I needed to work on myself, and I didn't just abandon all of my friendships at the time. No, I just took the time to really work on myself and recognize when friendships weren't really serving me? And not saying that your friends should serve you. It's more so, is this relationship helping my personal growth and development in this moment, in this period of time? Yes or no? Because and I'll attest to this, you might say no in this moment and not really engage with that person at that time a whole lot. Maybe a year later or a couple of years later, a couple months later, who knows, you might recognize, okay, like I'm in a place now where I can re-engage with this friendship or this relationship and it'll actually flourish, which is, I'm actually doing that right now. There's been a few friendships that I've missed dearly as I've been going through a vicious cycle of personal growth and development that now I'm revisiting and experiencing what it's like being this new me. In that transformational process, it can be really tough to be in those friendships or relationships that are from a past you, because when you're around those people, you will instantly want to go back to who you were before, whether you like it or not. And I found this for myself. I'm like, dang, when I'm with you, I'm like this whole different person that I'm not trying to be anymore. And it's not even like you're intending to do it. It's just, that's how human nature is. When you smell a familiar smell that you smelled before, it reminds you of that time of whatever was going on in that time period. It's the same thing, but like with our relationships. So we have to be really cognizant and aware of what stage we are. Are we in that transformational process? Because if we are in that transformational process, we have to be really protective of who we allow into our lives and the time and energy that we give them, and just be aware that we need to focus on building ourselves before re-engaging into those friendships and relationships.
Yeah, that's good. You mentioned how taking time for yourself, but that's okay. Just some relationships, it might make it stronger, but it's okay to take that break to focus on you and to be aware of setting those boundaries of, okay, like I'm trying to be this new version of me that's a better me, setting those boundaries to make sure that you don't go back to the old version. I thought that was really powerful. And also, just if somebody's experiencing friends or just relationships with people who have distanced themselves, it's not always you. You spoke, Kiani, of like specifically choosing to take time for yourself. But there's also situations where, it might just be them, and they might see the growth in you, and they are choosing to step away. But it's not necessarily you're doing anything bad or anything like that. It's not always. So don't put that on yourself, because I know I went through that. I was like, I don't understand. I'm trying to be a better me. I'm not being a bad me. So yeah, I totally understand. So I think that's great what you shared, Kiani. So powerful. Everything you said so far has been great. So again, you guys, I hope you guys are taking notes on this. So right now we're going to dive into another part of the event, because Kiani, I'm going to ask you some questions and more diving in, because the title of this event was Scholarship Winning Tips from someone who graduated debt-free. And so Kiani here, she has graduated debt-free. She has successfully won scholarships. And so we want to make sure here at Break the Odds that this event serves you by giving you guys practical tips at all of our events, giving you guys practical tips and action steps on whatever the topic is, so you guys can leave the event today being able to feel confident in taking action, having action steps. So Kiani has some slides prepared, and she's actually going to share some practical tips and action steps for you guys. So again, make sure you have something to take notes with, because you guys definitely want to take notes on that.
Okay, perfect. All right. So Elise had asked me, what are my action steps for students who are wanting to get started with scholarships? And I want to go ahead and touch on something that is really important just to achieve any sort of goal that you have in life. And when people think of motivation, I think that's the question when it comes to, do I apply for the scholarship or not? Well, I don't really feel the motivation. Like, I'm not motivated to do it. And I think motivation is just a feeling. And even the most successful people out there don't always have it. So the question then becomes, how do successful people maintain or create the motivation? And one of the things that they do, including myself, is putting their why in front of them. For me, my why was the fact that I wanted to live on campus. And once I made that my goal, every decision I made after that had to help me get to that goal. And I didn't do this back then because I didn't know about it, but the first one on there, vision boards, is super key to helping you get to your goals. And the reason why is because putting images up of your goals and dreams in front of you actually helps your subconscious register that's something that you want. And people have a misconception about vision boards. They think, oh, if I put this picture up, then that thing is magically going to come to me. That's just simply not true. There's actually psychology behind in a lot of studies that show that when you have something in front of you visually, you naturally, like, it brings that subconscious into your conscious, and you recognize that's a goal for you, and you start to make decisions based off of that goal. And this can be really helpful in those times when you have to make a decision, like whether or not to start the scholarship application. And you're more likely to get started if you have those goals ahead of you. And another way that you can do this, let's just say if you're a guy and you're like, vision boards are stupid, like, I get it. So you can do something else. You can just write it down. There's been so many studies out there that have shown that writing down your goals leads to higher chances of success in that goal than just keeping it in your head. So that's another way you can. And then I thought of this the other day and I was like, oh, this could be a cool one. You could find some things that remind you of that goal and carry them around with you. If you want to be debt free, maybe you could carry around a little like dollar sign with you, like on your keychain or something. Or if you want to go to Hawaii or something, you can have a Hawaii keychain. It'll just remind you of those things and help you get your subconscious thinking about it so that way you can make the right decisions. And then you could also, I do this one, make it a screensaver on your phone. And like you could write out like debt free on there and like across the screen, and then that could be your screensaver. I do this. I want to live on the beach one day, so I have like several images of the beach on as my screensaver. And those are some things from a mindset perspective that you can use to get yourself in that mode.
No, that's so good. And if you guys are part of the Student Navigator, many of these things sound very familiar. So these things that you're hearing, these are what successful people do, whether it's in life or funding college debt free. So I hope you guys this reminds you of some of those things. And if you're new to our community, make sure, you write these down because this is really important. And so one thing that you did mention is vision boards. And we had to break the odds. We actually have an episode all about vision boards, but I want you to spend some time today for anybody who what's a vision board? Like, I'm not exactly sure what that is. Just real quick, give a quick summary to someone in the audience who might not be familiar with what that is, because it's such a powerful tool. And so I want to make sure some people are familiar with what that is.
Yeah, so a vision board, it can be like an actual physical board. It could be like a poster board. It could be really anything that you can get your hands on, or you could just put them up on your wall. So basically what you do is you just print out, or you can cut out images from like a magazine of things that you really want to achieve in life. So for me, if I look at mine, I have a lot of images of like travel. So I have this picture that I found from Pinterest of this girl looking through the plane window, and there's the Eiffel Tower in the background, there's Paris. So that's a place I really want to go to. So that's clearly on my vision board. And what else do I got? I got some images of some inspirational houses that I would love in the future. So those are on there. I also have images of my family up there. Why? Because I really want to be able to support my family in anything, whether it be finances or with my time. So they're up there because I want to be able to spend my time and my resources on them. So those are just some ideas of what you can put on your vision board, but it could be literally anything. Like I have some friends who they want this certain body type, so they took pictures of like models or like girls that they like really wanted to look like, and then put them on their vision board. And what's really funny is this is my friend, and she did this a couple years ago, and I promise you, I think she looks like the girl that she put there now. So it works.
Wow.
Yeah, it works, but not based off of like, oh, it magically comes to you. Like she obviously put in work, like she's been working out a lot and eating really well. So you have to understand that the vision board is not to like magically attract it to you, even though that's what some people say. It's more so just to help you remember that is your goal and something that's actually important to you, and start making decisions based off of that. Because when it's in front of you, it's like keeping you accountable. It's you actually really want that if you're not like taking steps towards it. Yeah. So that's what vision boards are.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was a great explanation. Visualize yourself in the future. What are your goals? And seeing it, like you said, in front of you, you're being reminded, like you said, having that accountability and being reminded that helps you stay motivated and continue to take action towards reaching that goal. So thank you for sharing that. I know I had another question for you, and you can go ahead and dive in with that one.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So this is my second tip that's a little bit more what is the word? Tactical. So the second tip that I would have for somebody who is starting off with applying for scholarships is I would say start small. And the way that you can start small is by creating small wins. Because like we said before, sometimes the hardest part isn't so much finding the scholarship opportunities because they're there. It's usually just getting started. So the best way to get started is to start building confidence through generating those small wins. And a small win can show you that you can succeed, because in reality, success doesn't come from other people believing in you. It comes from you believing in you. And that could be a whole talk in itself. Most times we can only believe in ourselves if we've seen ourselves do something or succeed at something before. And that's why vision is super important. And that's why having family members believe in you is also important as well, because it allows you to start believing that you can see yourself being successful. And if you, let's just say though, if you don't have like supportive family members and you want to generate that motivation for yourself and that belief, you can set aside an hour to start. And that could be a small win because you just have that hour, you have it blocked off. You're like, I'm just going to compile a list of scholarships, and you set aside the time and you get it done. That's a win. You said you're going to do that and you did it. So that's a win. And the only thing that you have to do at that point is just make sure that you actually do it. And when you follow through with something like that, that builds confidence in yourself and you feel good about yourself. And when you feel good about yourself, that is a great time to continue like the upward momentum. And so something for me is the next thing you could do is just go for the easier opportunities. That's something that I did when I was applying for a scholarship, the smaller ones. I know there's like these big $20,000, like the really big scholarships, but go for the ones that have like fairly easy application processes or shorter essay writing. If you're not so good at essay writing, start with those ones, because once you finish those, you'll again start to feel better about yourself and continue to be able to continue that upward momentum. And really that what that does is just allows you to start in the next step. So if you have already started to apply for those shorter ones, maybe you can now set aside a larger gap of time to write an essay. And little by little, you'll start to build that confidence and it'll snowball into you getting more and more done. And sooner or later, those scholarships will rack up and you'll be on your way to being debt free. And plus, you'll come away with that experience totally confident in yourself. And that will translate into confidence that you'll be able to graduate and eventually you'll be able to have your dream job or dream business. So that is how confidence snowballs through taking action.
I love that. Confidence snowballs through taking action. I love that. And you said small wins, like small progress is still progress, right? So I love how you mentioned just setting aside time for an hour to start, because I think especially as students, like you mentioned as a student, you were really involved in extracurriculars and all of that. And I think for a student that might be focusing on school, then they may play a sport or be involved in a lot of clubs, and then they might work and they have so much going on. They might feel like, how can I even find time to apply for scholarships and take action because I'm busy with everything else? But I like what you said, where just set aside just a small amount of time, whether it's an hour or what have you. Because I'm pretty sure if you look at your phone, it'll tell you how much screen time, how much time you spend on your phone. And I'm sure we spend more, there's an hour you could spare that you normally spend on your phone, you could spend taking action. If we really start to look at our time. So I think that's good how you said just baby steps. So just carve out a little bit of time. You don't have to set aside the whole afternoon every day. Just do that small hour and that can turn into more. And then also I love how you said, go for the easier opportunities first. I think you hit the nail on the head when it comes to scholarships, especially because like you said, a lot of students want to go for the $20,000 ones, which are important to go for because that could help. Like I had a friend in high school who got a scholarship that paid for his undergrad, master's, and doctorate all the way through one scholarship. So you definitely want to apply for those. but don't underestimate the smaller ones, like what you said. I know for me, like that played a factor for me. Like some of those smaller ones, like they added up, and a lot of people either didn't know about them or they chose not to apply for them because it wasn't as much. Like the $500, the $1,000 ones, those add up. So were there any specific scholars that you can remember that you won that maybe someone might be encouraged to apply for?
Oh man, I don't remember the names of them, unfortunately, because now that's, oh my gosh, that's coming up on 7 or 8 years ago. So unfortunately, I don't remember what the scholarship names were, but I will agree with you on what you said. Like the scholarships that I got were definitely those like 500, 700, 1,000, those kinds of ones. The cool thing about some of those though, I do remember I got one that was like reoccurring. It gave you like whatever that amount was, like $1,000 like each year. And so as long as you like kept up and proved that you were still in school, you would still get that scholarship. There are definitely those out there. I think I also found through my school, like when I was in high school, because this is when I was applying for scholarships more. So my counselor had a list of scholarships that I went through, and I think I also did some online research as well. So you can definitely find them. Recently, I work for a digital marketing agency as my full-time career. We have a client called Ascent. That's ASCENT, and I think they have a pretty nice blog that kind of shows you like scholarship opportunities. And they do something similar to you, Elise, but a little. I think they are like a loan. I don't know, like a loan place, but at the same time, like they provide a lot of really great like resources to college students, even if it's not like loan based. It's also about scholarships and stuff. So you guys can check out Ascent. They offer a lot of those, and I think they do pop up. Oh, this scholarship like just got released, so they have the news and stuff. So you can check out that too.
Yeah, that's good. Can you spell that out one more time for people in the audience for them to check that out?
Yeah, it's ASCENT, Ascent.
Awesome. So she said, you guys, they let you know when there's some scholarships going on. So some of the ones, like you mentioned, your counselor was a good source for you to learn about some scholarships. You said online search. I know for me, one of them was the PTA. That one was one as well. So they were like one of the smaller scholarships. So if anybody's listening, that's another one that popped in my head, because your school has a PTA, but then also like your district has a PTA too. So like for me, I got 2 scholarships through PTA. I won the one for my high school, but then I won the one for like my local district too. So there's ways to get multiple ones too within PTA. So I know most schools have a PTA program. So that's one that I encourage people to check out, whether you're a parent or a student that's here. Definitely check out the PTA as well as your counselor, like you said, Kiani. So awesome. That's great resources that you've shared so far.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And I think did you want to dive into the last question?
Yeah. So the last question I wanted to ask you was, what did it feel like crossing the stage, knowing that you were debt free? What has that freedom allowed you to do after graduation that might have otherwise limited you to if you had graduated with debt? So I know it's like a 2-part question. The first one was like, what was that like? And we can start off with that. What was that like crossing the stage debt free? What was that experience like for you, for these students that are dreaming of that? They have that on their vision board. If they've written that down as their goal, what was that like having lived that and done that?
Yeah, so honestly, I took it for granted when I was actually crossing stage. I actually wasn't really thinking about that, but I will say that it did feel really good. And I can click onto my next slide just so you can see what I look like on my, let's go back. There we go. So that's what I look like on my high school graduation. And then you'll see on the right, these are all like the scholarships and awards that I got at like my senior awards. And I'll tell you that I felt really good receiving these because I didn't expect it. And they just called my name up and they were like, wow, you won $2,000, $2,000+ worth of scholarships. I was like, oh, wow, that's awesome. So I felt so good at that time because I didn't I don't know, I just sent off the applications. I didn't hear anything back. You just forget about it. Like we mentioned before, it's likely that you will actually get those smaller scholarships. So I had a few that I had won, and that they announced this at my senior awards for high school. And so that was me in high school. But looking back at knowing that I am debt free, and also knowing that a lot of other students out there and some of my friends are not debt free, it really does make a difference, because you can see it, how it affects their life, because they're like, oh yeah, I have to work to pay these off now. That's going to affect them for quite some time, just depending on what major they were and what kind of career that they have now. But I'm really so incredibly thankful that I took the time to get my money in order and take the time to chip in for books, or sometimes not buy books because I don't need it. But you don't always need the books. That's another thing too. You don't need to buy the books, so figure that out. And so I'm grateful that I did that, because now knowing that I am debt free, I just feel like sky's the limit, right? There's nothing holding me back. There's nothing that's like being held over my head saying, well, you got to have a job for the rest of your life, or else you're going to get I don't know, take stuff taken away from you. I don't know what happens if you don't pay your student loans, but I know it's not good. But yeah, I just feel like completely like more free, and I just feel like I have peace of mind, and that is priceless. I believe that everybody should be debt free as quickly as possible, because it's like now I actually feel confident in investing into my business and investing into the things that I want to do without having to worry about, I got bills to pay. So less bills, the better.
Right. Yeah, no, that's so good. And I wanted to ask that because oftentimes, if you're listening and watching, and it's possible to fund your education debt free, but if there's anything that you've taken away from what Kiani has shared, is that it takes action. And so with that, I want you guys to see someone who has lived it and done it, and just hearing some of the key words that she shared, that she has peace of mind. She feels free and confident to be able to invest and do things like that. That's the beautiful part about funding college debt free. Yes, you can invest with debt, you could do all those things, but not having that burden. And like you said, Kiani, having that peace of mind, like you said, it's priceless, right? You don't have to worry about that or have that over your head. And I appreciate you coming today and sharing your experience and sharing your insight, because and I hope those of you who are watching, I'm confident that you're inspired by Kiani and her story. And even if you're tuning in, maybe you have a year left, or even if you funded the last year debt free, that's still a win. So thank you, Kiani, for being here today, and again sharing your information. And I wanted to, before we open up to Q&A, I know, Kiani, you have a resource for our audience today, so I want to make sure you have a chance to share that with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. First, if you want to connect with me, you can, the best way to reach me is my Instagram. So at growing to be Kiani, you can DM me, give me a follow, I'll follow you back. And then you can also go to the growtobefree.com website that has all of the podcasts on there, whether you listen to Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, it's all on there, so you can find them. But something that's really cool that I just released recently is a line of notebooks. And so I have a special offer that's a pre-sale, so 20% off these ambitious piece notebooks. And they're not just your any everyday notebooks, they are composition style. I don't know if you've ever used a composition book, but you can never literally on the inside of them, and so that's the downside of like composition books as opposed to spirals. But I decided to make use of that space and put motivational, inspirational, encouraging quotes there. So it's not just your any old notebook, they are pretty cute, but they also have a different quote on every single page. So it's a little bit of a fun way to take notes in class or journal. I think it's a really fun way. So you can go to this URL. It's on the growtobefree.com/product /ambitious-peach-notebook, and you can take advantage of that 20% off pre-sale that is happening right now. And pre-sale ends on the 6th of August, and then I think the notebooks will be ready to be sent out about like 10 days later. So yeah, you can go ahead and check those out, and I'd love to connect with you guys offline as well.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I love that. I love how you have the motivational words in there. If anything, you guys, you can use this as a baby step for your vision board, right? Like just write down your goals in there, and it has a quote, motivational thing, or even just as you're studying or working, it can help you stay motivated. I love that. So thank you for sharing that. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to check and see if we have any questions. Let's see. What would be the best time to start applying for scholarships?
Today, I'll say that. I was going to say anytime, which is true. I would say just like whenever you can get started. I think Elease knows a little bit more about like timelines for scholarships and how those play out. But I feel as soon as you can get started, you should just get started.
Yes, yes. And I love how you said today. Like, I think that's the key is like now is the best day to take action towards the future. So if you're in middle school or early high school, today. If you're in college, today. If you're in grad school, today. The time to take action is now. It's not too early, it's not too late. I love that. All right. So the next question is, did you get any scholarships in college?
Great question. I definitely should have, but I think at the time I was like, I had a job. Actually, at some point I had like multiple jobs. So I was actually doing pretty well with funding it just through my job, unfortunately. But in reality, I should have applied for more scholarships during college. I did have, I think, that one that was like reoccurring that I applied for during high school, and that continued to give me some money throughout the rest of the college career. But granted, at the same time too, I lived on campus the first year, so my expenses actually went down for the rest of the years. So it was a little bit more manageable too.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. The other question is, what can parents do to help their student with scholarships?
I would say
if you could talk to your parents and see what could they have done to help you like in your journey.
Okay. My mom was definitely very adamant about me applying for scholarships. Like she would always kind of bug me about it. And I did it. She got me to do it. I would say from a parent's perspective, like maybe like sending your kids like some actual scholarships that you found. Cause I don't think my mom really did that. I think she was just like, apply for scholarships. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do. Like maybe send some ones that you feel like your son or daughter can really apply for and actually get. And then if you present it to them, you can say something like, I feel like you would really win this one. Or I feel like even if you don't win this one, like you just writing this like short essay, you can use that on other scholarships. Just being more like encouraging about it instead of you have to do this. Yeah. That would be my thing.
Yeah, no, that's good. A big takeaway, what I heard from what you said is just help send some scholarships to your students' way. Because I think that's like half the time is like just looking for them. Taking action is the easy part. It's like finding ones that you're eligible for can take time. So yeah, as parents, as Kiani said, if you can just help in that search process, what your students eligible for, like just get their GPA and get those basic things and just look for some that can help for sure. I definitely would concur with that. That would definitely be a good help. Awesome. So if there aren't any further questions, I think that concludes the Q&A.
Yeah.
So thank you again, Kiani, for being here. Is there any final, as we close out today, is there any final words of encouragement, whether it's about funding college debt free, personal growth, what have you, anything that we talked about today? Is there like a final message that you have for our audience as we conclude?
I would say embrace the journey. And I think if you've heard that quote before, you're probably really annoyed of it, but I will say that it is super important to just enjoy the season that you're in. Right now, you might be stressed out. You're like, how do I pay for college? And college is hard. I get it. I've been there completely, but you're probably gonna look back on your college years and be like, wow, that was really fun. I really enjoyed it. And if you're an anxious person like me, you might not enjoy something in the moment like you really should. So I think I would just take the time to really stop and acknowledge where you're at and just enjoy where you're at and just know that it's a journey and everybody's going through a journey.
Yes, no, I love that. And enjoy the season that you're in. Yeah, that's so powerful. So thank you, Kiani, for that. And so you guys, once again, that concludes our virtual pop-up event. I hope you guys enjoyed today. I know I've enjoyed listening to your insight. And make sure you guys check out letsbreaktheodds.com. That is where you guys can stay in the loop of our blog, any podcast episodes from Break the Odds podcast, as well as tune in to where you can find out what our next pop-up event is. Also, I encourage you guys to connect with us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn at Break the Odds. You guys can stay in the loop with that. Once again, this event is sponsored by the Student Navigator, which is dedicated to helping you break the odds when it comes to funding college debt free. So you can learn more at thestudentnavigator.com. So as we wrap up today, you guys can definitely take advantage of the virtual networking. So go ahead and click on the networking tab, as well as once again, check out the virtual expo where you can learn more about some resources, specifically Kiani's booth, all about Grow to Be Free. So it has links in there where you can connect to her podcast, Grow to Be Free, where you can check out her notebook, is at growtobefree.com. So thank you guys again. And I hope you guys have a great evening. And let's continue to break the odds together, you guys. You got this. See you guys next time.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked the episode, it would mean so much to me if you shared it with a friend you feel like needs to hear it, because everyone deserves to experience growth and freedom. And as for you, I would love to get to know you and hear your feedback on the podcast. So I invite you to reach out to me on Instagram at growingtobekiani or on the Grow to Be Free podcast Facebook page. And if you're looking for community and connection, join the Grow to Be Free Club on Clubhouse. Until next time, see you soon.